joining us on the air this morning. As always, let me punch a button here for Bob, and then let me punch another button here for Bob. And Bob should be with us. Hi, Bob.
Good morning, Todd.
It's good to have you with us. Our conversation brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Now, we got the other phone line fixed, so you can call Bob at 479-1160 if you have a question for him this morning. Bob, we're going to have some warmer weather next week finally, and I think we're probably going to be too tempted to go outside and do some things that we probably should wait a while to do. What would some of those things be? You know what?
Depends on how energetic we feel after this long winter.
Yeah, well, you know that it's leading to the question of when can I go out and prune those grape vines, but
yep.
That's probably one of several things. Huh?
And there are a number of plants that could be pruned at this time, especially fruit trees, apple trees, especially fit into that category that really need annual pruning in order to keep them at the size that they need to be, keep them opened up enough so that we can get good light into the tree during the growing season to grow good quality fruit. So this is definitely, we're into March now, that process can be started, and then there's people that are finishing that up at this point. But that's fine because those trees are hardy and tough, and you have to get started depending on how many trees you have so that you can get through them and get the job done. So, yeah, pruning and on the fruit, you might have other fruit plantings, blueberries, brambles that you can go in. Like with the brambles, you can go in now, and any of those dead canes that are in there should be pretty visible, and you can go and get those cleaned out. Because they would have died last fall going into winter. And so if you haven't removed those can be taken out at this point, and then you can get that pruning process started. And then just going around and taking time to just look at different plants because there may be some shrubs that you need to touch up. Maybe they got a little storm damage or snow damage or winter damage over the winter, either by, snow or ice, or even some of our wildlife may have come and visited and done some damage, the rabbits, the deer, and just looking at that and pruning out anything that's dead or appears to be dead, or things that are overgrown, this rejuvenation time frame, and we've talked about this on other plants. Examples would be forsythia, lilacs, rhododendrons, any of those multi-stemmed shrubs can be rejuvenation pruned, meaning we would cut them back from a foot off the ground, basically. So if they've totally, gotten out of hand, gotten too big for their allotted space, and then the other thing regarding some of these flowering shrubs, spring flowering shrubs, is that they can get overgrown, get too much wood, too much plant to maintain, and then the flower show declines over time. Because there's so much energy from the plant goes into just, keeping that structure going that you sacrifice some on the blooms. And a lot of those plants, that's why we really have those. That's their one time to shine is in the spring, and they don't, forsythia and lilac are two good examples of that, that, the rest of the year they're a green plant. So keeping those plants with younger wood, so either doing that rejuvenation pruning where you cut everything back and then let it regrow, you're going to lose flowers for at least 1 year out of that, and maybe 2, or doing the selective pruning either on an annual or every other year basis just to remove 1 or 2 of the oldest stems in the plant. That will then signal the plant to start to regrow, send up new growth from the base, and so we can just we can control the size that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can also have a healthier plant, and then one that will also flower better over time.
Does rhododendron fall in that category?
And
because you see it's bigger in a house sometimes.
Right, that's right. So there are different varieties of rhododendron. Some will get in the 3 to 5 feet range. Some are in the 4 to 6 foot, and then you've got examples like rhododendron maximum, which will get taller than your house over time. So depending on which cultivar or which species you have, you might have some size controlling there where they never get too big. And then in other cases, we didn't know when we bought the plant or didn't realize that it could get to be a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, so sometimes, or we plant them too close to something, and we didn't give them enough room, that yes, you might need to go in and rejuvenation prune now, where you cut the whole rhododendron back and then let it regrow over time. Mm-hmm. Or we selectively can thin some branches out to do that as well as another way that you can do that with rhododendron.
I want to ask you about rose bushes. Did not get out in the fall to get the rose bush trimmed back the way that normally I might, and therefore it sat untrimmed all through the winter. When is the best time to do that? Before it starts greening up or after it does?
Yeah, and usually you can go either way with those. If you definitely have material in there, branches, parts of branches, maybe you have dieback that occurred, maybe part of the, from the base up, you maybe have 3 or, depending on the size of the plant, you might have, the base of the plant might be fine, but the tips have died back. So you can kind of go and look and see where that bark has shrunken, and that differentiation line between live and dead wood, and you can go in and prune out the dead wood at this point. And sometimes that can be a little bit hard to tell because of the coloration. It might look like it's not quite right, or there was some damage there. Although this winter we've been pretty consistently cold. We haven't had any wild swings. And that's, of course, when we tend to get more damage on plants because they start to come out of, they lose some of that hardiness because it warms up, and then we get a cold snap again, and they can't react fast enough. So you could have some transition zones there, but yeah, you can go in and do some light pruning now, and then maybe just wait till we start to get some new growth on those to make sure that we've removed the dead wood, and then do the finish pruning then. Because we still could have some snaps of bad weather here through March. We know we've sometimes have had some very large snows during the month of March before we move into April. So we can be jumping the gun a little bit, especially on some of those more sensitive plants. Yeah. And a lot of the roses tend to be on that borderline of zone 5 into zone 6 and can sometimes feel the brunt of some of those temperature swings during the winter.
Hey, we're having some pipe laid in the backyard right now, and so the yard's going to be all torn up, and because of that, my yard's not going to be as purty as it normally is, I'm feeling. How am I going to bring it back? When do I plant the grass seed, and what are some of the tips for that?
And right from the get-go, when they're digging, if at all possible, take that top layer of topsoil off first. If they're using machines to do that, if they can just scoop as they make that ditch or do that digging, if we can take that topsoil off, put it in a separate pile. Mm-hmm. And then when we get down into the stuff underneath that, which might be a mixture of clay or shale or stone, that can then come out of the hole, because what comes out last should go back in first.
Yeah.
Unless they're, completely replacing everything with gravel or, depending on the situation. But if we can preserve that topsoil and keep it separate, that will go a long way to helping us out when that gets filled back in and we need to, let things settle and then try to plant, if it's in the yard, plant grass again. Mm-hmm. Having that topsoil back on top will really help you out down the road. And invariably, a lot of times what happens is what comes out last goes back in last. And what came out first goes back in the hole first. Or it gets so mixed up that you can't really tell. And then when you go to try to seed grass and grow grass again, then we have trouble because we're actually trying to plant it in pretty much subsoil. Mm-hmm. And we often don't, so we get variations and differences and you can see for a long time then where, oh yeah, I remember that ditch. Mm-hmm. I can still see where it is.
Every time I run my mower over it, I feel
yes, you can feel it. Yeah. So just taking a little extra care up front as you do some of those jobs can be very helpful in the long term.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sure that there will be more questions on that topic as this project gets completed. Robert, thank you so much for visiting with us today. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
You also.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.